Welcome back. As we monitor what is happening in the Oval Office, you see a video playing. That is in the Oval Office of the White House. We're going to, again, monitor it. But luckily, we have White House reporters here who have on their phones a running explanation and reporting from the White House pool about what is happening. And as you saw, if there's a video playing there, it is a pretty good indicator that things have devolved in this meeting. Tyler, can you explain what's happened?
Yeah, so as we were talking before the break, we were waiting to see how the South African president would respond to the claims that Trump was making, unsubstantiated claims about genocide against white farmers. It seems since we took a break, the reporters kept asking questions about that, and there's been some arguing inside the Oval Office about those claims. The South African president has encouraged Trump to listen to other voices that he said would dispute those claims. Trump didn't seem to be interested in hearing about that, and so now he has asked his aide, Natalie Harp, to play this video in the Oval Office. It's obviously playing right now, and our understanding is the point of this video is to back up some of the claims that Trump has made about South Africa. It seems this is clearly a well-orchestrated effort. They brought screens. There's not usually TVs in the Oval Office, and they were prepared to do this.
Yeah. This is
it's an ambush.
Yeah,
I mean, they're really,
I was going to say set up, but you know, ambush works too.
Right. And I think, at some points, my colleagues who are following this meeting, they're saying, at some points the South African president was kind of looking forward, kind of trying not to watch, although obviously the President Trump is very much engaged in this video that is playing, which is why, I think we all anticipated that at some point this meeting would go awry and in full view of the cameras, which is what happened with President Zelensky a few months ago.
Yeah, listen, and going in, I'm sure the South African president knew of the risks, which is why he brought the golfer and the flattery, and initially didn't want to answer, right, when this idea about unsubstantiated claims came up. But here we have...
Nia, let's just listen in, because it looks like the South African president is talking.
It's in South Africa this week. We need to find out.
Mr. President, the Pentagon announced that it would be accepting a Qatari jet to be used as Air Force One.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You to get out of here. What does this have to do with the Qatari jet? They're giving the United States Air Force a jet, okay? And it's a great thing. We're talking about a lot of other things. It's NBC trying to get off the subject of what you just saw. You are a real, you're a terrible reporter. Number one, you don't have what it takes to be a reporter. You're not smart enough. But for you to go into a subject about a jet that was given to the United States Air Force, which is a very nice thing, they also gave $5.1 trillion worth of investment in addition to the jet. Go back, you ought to go back to your studio at NBC, because Brian Roberts and the people that run that place, they ought to be investigated. They are so terrible the way you run that network, and you're a disgrace. No more questions from you. Go ahead. Go ahead, talk about that. His name is Peter something. He's a terrible reporter. Quiet. Let's go.
Thank you so much. President Trump, and a disaster from ENCA in South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve.
What would you like President Ramaphosa to do about the situation that we've just seen on the screen?
I don't know. Look, these are articles over the last few days. Death of people. Death. Horrible death. Death. I don't know. To pick anyone, white South Africans are fleeing because of the violence and racist laws. And this is all, I'll give these to you.
We're going to now go to Daniel Dale, because there is a lot to unpack here. Daniel, I know you want to talk about this, and I want you to talk about this. I just want to say one thing beforehand. Peter Alexander is a terrific reporter. And he's not just there for NBC News. He is there representing the pool, the television network pool. And he asked important questions that all of us want answered. Daniel, that is on the Qatari jet, which we'll get to in a bit. Let's just start with what we believe is happening there. I mean, you see the president holding up what he says is evidence of what he claims is genocide, as David Chalian said, and I want you to add to this. Those are unsubstantiated claims. What he did by bringing a video into the Oval Office, televisions just aren't hanging out in the Oval Office. This was a very scripted, strategic move. And what they played looked like some kind of video which you could hear the president saying, this is proof of, President Trump saying, this is proof of genocide. And the South African president was kind of forced to figure out how to play it on the fly. And I believe I heard him saying something like, well, we'll look into it. Daniel.
Yeah, that's right. So let's look at what the facts actually show. The facts show that South Africa is a country with a very high number of violent crimes. But the facts also show, Dana, that a tiny number of those violent crimes are committed against white farmers. So official data in South Africa, which is matched by data from advocacy groups, shows that in the last 9 months of last year, 2024, there were about 20,000 murders in the country of South Africa. Again, a terribly high number. How many of those murders were committed on farms?
Daniel, stand by. I want to hear the
0.2%.
South African president speaking now.
Go ahead.
We have a multi-party democracy in South Africa that allows people to express themselves, political parties to adhere to various policies, and in many cases, or in some cases, those policies do not go along with government policy. Our government policy is completely against what he was saying, even in the parliament. And they're a small minority party, which is allowed to exist in terms of our constitution.
But you do allow them to take land.
No.
You do allow them to take land.
Nobody can take land.
And then when they take the land, they kill the white farmer. And when they kill the white farmer, nothing happens to them.
No, there is
Nothing happens to them.
There is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people. And we have now
The
been
farmers are
utilized.
black. The farmers are not black.
We
I don't
now-
say that's good or bad, but the farmers are not black. And the people that are being killed in large numbers, and you saw all those grave sites, and those are people that loved ones going, I guess on a Sunday morning, they told me, to pay respect to their loved ones that were killed. Their heads chopped off. They died violently. And, you know, I mean, we're here to talk about it, and I didn't know we'd get involved here. But I will say this, that if the news wasn't fake, like NBC, which is fake news, totally, one of the worst, ABC, NBC, CBS, horrible. But if they weren't fake news like this jerk that we have here, if we had real reporters, they'd be covering it. But the fake news in this country doesn't talk about that. They don't want to talk about it, but now they have to talk about it. But they won't. This won't even be a subject. They'll have him talking about why did a country give a free, think of this, why did a country give an airplane to the United States Air Force? Okay? The United States, not to me, to the United States Air Force, so they could help us out, because we need an Air Force One until that's Air Force One, it's being built. 2 of them being built. But Boeing's a little bit late, unfortunately. So why did they give us a plane to the United States Air Force? That's what that idiot talks about after viewing a thing where thousands of people are dead.
I'm sorry, I don't have a plane to give you.
I wish you did. I'd take it. I would take it. If your country offered the United States Air Force a plane, I would take it.
Okay. But coming back to this issue, which I really would like us to talk about, and talk about it very calmly. We were taught by Nelson Mandela that whenever there are problems, people need to sit down around a table and talk about them.
Well, there are problems.
And this is precisely what we would also like to talk about, including, of course, trade matters, investment matters. So the issues that concern you as the United States.
Those are all recent. Those are all deaths.
Yeah, in many ways, I mean, one should say you are a partner partner of South Africa, and you are raising concerns, and these are concerns that we are willing to talk to you about. Let me just add quickly, you know, the criminality that we are experiencing in our country needs quite a lot of technological capability. And in one of our areas in South Africa, we're using US technology, which is able to, in many ways, identify where shootings are happening and all that. And I'd like to talk about that because there is support that we can get from you and the United States to help us deal with all these acts of criminality. And that is what I believe partnership is all about. And we are here as a partner so that we can help each other whenever there are challenges. So I'd like us to discuss it, and of course outside of the media, so that we sit down and have a really good discussion that will lead to good outcomes.
Are there any other punitive measures that could be in place should you not be satisfied that South Africa is fixing some of the very bad things, in inverted commas, that you tweeted are happening?
Well, there are a lot of bad things happening in many countries, but this in particular has been very, very bad, and because of we're going to have the whole world watching in another short period of time because you have the G20, and that's a big deal. And it seems like, I want you to look good. I don't want you to look bad.
Very good.
But we have hundreds of people, thousands of people trying to come into our country because they feel they're going to be killed and their land is going to be confiscated. And you do have laws that were passed that gives you the right to confiscate land for no payment. You can take away land for no payment.
I want to clarify that because we have a constitution. Our constitution guarantees and protects the sanctity of tenure of land ownership. And that constitution protects all South Africans with regard to land ownership. However, we do say, because we've got to deal with the past, the government, and as your government also has the right to expropriate land for public use.
And you're doing that.
And we've never really gotten underway with that. And we are going to be doing so.
You're taking people's land away
we have not.
from them.
We have,
And those people in many cases are being executed. They're being executed. And they happen to be white, and most of them happen to be farmers. Mm-hmm. And that's a tough situation. I don't know how you explain that. How do you explain that? They're taking people's land away, and in many cases those people are being executed, and in many cases it's not the government that's doing it, it's people that kill them and then take their land, and nothing happens to them. But we have thousands of people that want to come into our country. They're also going to Australia in a smaller number. But we have thousands of people that want to come into our country, and they're white farmers, and they feel that they're going to die in South Africa, and it's a bad thing. Yeah, please.
What can South Africa do? What concessions would you like to see them make to improve relations with the United States? Then I have one more for President Ramaphosa afterwards.
Well, we just spoke about it. I got them a very, very complex machine, 150 of them. I was asked by the president if it could help, and I did that. And, I have great feeling for all countries. I deal with all countries, but I have a great feeling for South Africa because I have friends. I have a couple of friends, a few friends here today. I have many friends from South Africa, but many of those friends are not, they can't go back. I have Elon is from South Africa. I don't want to get Elon involved. That's all I have to do, get him into another thing. But Elon happens to be from South Africa. This is what Elon wanted. He actually came here on a different subject, sending rockets to Mars, okay? Yes. He likes that better. He likes that subject better. That's right. But Elon is from South Africa, and I don't want to talk to him about that. I don't think it's fair to him.
That's right.
But I will say that people are fleeing South Africa for their own safety. Their land is being confiscated, and in many cases they're being killed. And that scene of, you see how many crosses they have. Those crosses, that's a dead person in every one of them. And those trucks or cars are paying their respects to all of those dead people on a Sunday morning. That's a rough thing to explain away. And the problem we have, and the way, a correct and a fair media exposes things. But we have a very corrupt media. They won't even report this. If this were the other way around, it would be the biggest story. Now, I will say apartheid, terrible. That was the biggest story. That was reported all the time. This is sort of the opposite of apartheid. What's happening now is never reported. Nobody knows about it.
Okay, we're going to continue to monitor what has been a truly extraordinary, half an hour plus inside the Oval Office. I want to go back to Daniel Dale because there's a lot of fact checking to do. But as we were watching and talking here, just want to point out to our viewers that this is something that the president is taking a lot of time on, is clearly passionate about. We're going to fact check whether his passions are misguided or how misguided they are. But he's also dealing with his legislative agenda on the balance, hanging by a thread, which he'll have a meeting on this afternoon, Ukraine, the Middle East, so many other issues on his plate, not to mention the economy. And this is where he is, which is the issue that he was elected on, if you look at exit polls for voters. And this is the fight that the president feels is important for him to have at this moment. Now the facts. Daniel, take it away.
Quickly, last 9 months of 2024 in South Africa, 19,696 murders. How many of them occurred on farms? 36. 36, about 0.2%. That includes employees like security staff, farm workers. How many of them were actual farmers? 7 out of more than 19,000. And it's not even clear that those are all white farmers. Contrary to what the president said, many farmers in South Africa are black. Even the white ones who have been victims of crime, it's not clear have been targeted for racial reasons. Experts and white farmers themselves in South Africa have repeatedly told media outlets and think tanks that they feel they are often targeted for robbery and even attacks because they are geographically isolated and therefore vulnerable. So that is bad, but that is not genocide. And you know who else was skeptical of the genocide narrative, Dana? The Trump administration in 2020, the first Trump administration, put out a report saying that some advocacy groups asserted that white farmers are being targeted for burglaries and killings. But many observers, quote, attributed the incidents to the country's high and growing crime rate. According to the Institute for Security Studies, quote, farm attacks and farm murders have increased in recent years in line with the general upward trend in South Africa's serious and violent crimes. And the Trump State Department went on to note that in 2018 and 2019, quote, only 0.2% of those killings happened on farms, again, in line with the recent data. So I don't think this genocide claim about South Africa is a he said kind of dispute. I think it is clearly undermined, debunked by the facts we have available.
Thank you so much for sharing part of your afternoon with us. I'm Boris Sanchez alongside Breonna Keeler in the nation's capital, and we just witnessed an extraordinary clash in the Oval Office after President Trump repeatedly raises unsubstantiated claims of white genocide while sitting next to South Africa's president. But South Africa's president and his delegation pushed back.
I would say if there was Afrikaner farmer genocide, I can bet you these three gentlemen would not be here, including my Minister of Agriculture. He would not be with me. So it'll take him, President Trump, listening to their stories, to their perspective. That is the answer to your question.
But, Mr. President, I must say that we have, we have thousands of stories talking about it.
Sure.
And we have documentaries, we have news stories.
Yeah, he was talking about his Minister of Agriculture, who is white and belongs to a party different than his because of the coalition government that they have currently in South Africa. That Minister of Agriculture also saying that these claims by President Trump are not accurate, that also a lot of black farmers have been affected by violence. President Trump, though, before he was corrected by the ag minister, in a choreographed moment, called on his staff to play a prepared tape, and that's what this is here. It's video showing a montage of unfounded propaganda footage. The lights were dimmed in the Oval Office for this to play. Trump was then handed a stack of printed news articles that he cited as proof of these refuted claims.
Look, these are articles over the last few days. Death of people. Death, 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 horrible death. Death. You're taking people's land away
we have not.
from them. And those people, in many cases, are being executed. They're being executed. And they happen to be white, and most of them happen to be farmers. And that's a tough situation.
We do have reporters standing by to walk us through all of this. We do begin with Kristen Holmes at the White House. Kristen, the president is not correct here, but I wonder if his calculus is that when you have people fact-checking and debating over how bad these deaths actually are, that he's hoping that may mean ultimately he wins the news cycle.
Well, look, clearly here they were taking control of the news cycle. It's something that Donald Trump does best. He puts on a show, and this was a show. I just cannot state enough that this is not how these usual meetings go. Usually it is two leaders, world leaders, sitting there. They do a little wave. You do a couple questions possibly from the press. They say nice things about each other. The press leaves, and that's where the real negotiation and conversation begins. We just watched this entire tense moment, this back and forth, play out in front of the cameras, and there was a reason for that. That's what Donald Trump and his administration wanted, this sort of ambush of the South African president. As you saw, that screen was already in the room. He called for the lights to be dimmed. He called for them to play this video, and then he was provided with a stack of different articles in which he showed to the cameras. Again, as you said, he is putting on a show for the cameras, letting this all play out in front of the world. Again, usually things that happen behind closed doors. And the South African president there really was trying to stay on message. He was growing visibly uncomfortable when he saw that video saying that that came from an opposition's political party. And the mood in the room was tense. According to the reporters in there, you could feel the tension between the two men as this began to play out. Then we heard from one member of the delegation trying to explain what was going on with farmers in South Africa. Take a listen.
We have too many deaths, but it's across the board. It's not only white farmers, it's across the board.
I'm not sure if you could understand what he was saying there, but essentially he was saying it was not just white farmers who were being killed, that there were farmers being killed, but it was across the board in terms of racially across the board. But again, this was a really stunning moment between these two world leaders, and you could tell that the South African president came in here for a reset. Not only did he say so, but you could tell by his affect. He was trying to ingratiate himself with Trump, talking about how great Trump was during COVID, talking about golf. He even brought two of the world's greatest golfers, who are South African, with him as part of the delegation, which Donald Trump brought up, but he was clearly not prepared for this level of, again, almost an ambush here.
Kristen Holmes, live for us at the White House. Thanks so much for bringing us up to speed on that. Let's take you now to CNN's Larry Madowo, because Larry, you can give us some context on one of the videos that President Trump played in the Oval Office. He was claiming that there was 1,000 roadside graves. Apparently, this is a video that had been of a political statement made by a specific political party in South Africa, but not of actual grave sites, just a political demonstration to highlight violence against farmers.
That's correct. As the South African Ag Minister mentioned, they have a rural safety problem that affects both black and white farmers, and white farmers are unhappy about their security. If 1,000 white farmers died in South Africa, it would be impossible to hide that. Having said that, one of the videos that President Trump showed was Julius Malema. He's the far-left opposition leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters. He was actually expelled from President Ramaphosa's party about a decade ago, and that's when he formed his own party. He has repopularized this anti-apartheid song from the 80s that says, "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer." And the way it was used in that context was as a rallying call against apartheid, this unjust system of white minority rule. It has come back into the public domain again because Julius Malema likes to use it, and he sees it not as a physical, literal call to kill the farmer, but as a system that advocates for expropriation of land without compensation. So the EFF, that's Julius Malema's party, would like to go a lot further than the law President Ramaphosa signed in January. That law allows the South African government to seize unused farmland only if it is deemed to be just equitable, and in the public interest. President Ramaphosa brought his most diplomatic self. He is a skilled negotiator who once held a brief for Nelson Mandela. But nothing could have prepared him for this multimedia ambush. A 4.5-minute video montage that shows videos taken out of context, printouts of debunked laundry list of conspiracy theories. This was overall a very good day for white supremacists in South Africa because they got the validation they could have never imagined from the highest office in the land, in the Oval. And these are the talking points that President Trump repeated and brought before President Ramaphosa and his delegation, including very successful white South Africans, such as the Ag Minister, such as 2 successful golfers, and the billionaire Johan Rupert, who said there are murders across the board. And he helped negotiate this meeting with President Trump. He's a luxury goods magnate. He is behind brands like Cartier, and he was there in the Oval Office trying to shore up President Ramaphosa's point, but it fell on deaf ears.
We are still monitoring what has been a dramatic visit from South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in the Oval Office there with President Trump. This is oscillated between some high drama with President Trump kind of ambushing him with a video at one point, but then they're also talking about golfing champions and the World Cup. So they're covering a lot of different ground here. Let's go to Kristen Holmes, who has been following this discussion, which has really been extraordinary, Kristen.
It is, and what we've really seen in the last few minutes, just up until now, was a lot of the South African delegation speaking to Donald Trump, trying to dispute what was in the videos that he had shown. And just a little bit of a reminder of how we got here, Donald Trump was asked a question of what would it take you to believe that there was not white genocide in South Africa, something Donald Trump has claimed, but there's no evidence of. The South African president then interrupted him and said, I know what it's going to take. It's going to take him talking to members of my delegation, the people that I brought, which he notes includes some famous, world famous golfers that are from South Africa. Then on cue, Donald Trump turns off the lights and signals to his team to play the videos, in which they play videos that he and his team say show white genocide, that show officials in South Africa chanting about white death. Now, you heard the South African officials defending what was in that video, saying that is not a historical documentary, that is a political video, that those were the opposition party, those are not the people in power. This was a demonstration of sorts. You've heard each of the members of this delegation talking about how, while there are hardships for everyone in South Africa on various planes, there is not white genocide. All of this, of course, stemming from the claims that Donald Trump has said about white farmers, and now the fact that we have, he and his administration have allowed 50 of these white Afrikaner farmers to come into the United States last week on refugee status, something that he talked about. When you hear the president, the South African president, he clearly came here trying to reset. He even said that. He was very complimentary of Donald Trump. He said he wanted to have these conversations. He wanted to talk it out. He wanted him to hear from the people that he brought. And then Donald Trump came with these videos, as well as with these articles that he had printed out, saying that they were hearing from thousands of people, Trump, that this was happening in South Africa. Now, as you noted, it does appear to be going back and forth between kind of pleasantries and light conversation. Donald Trump talking to some of these world champions of golf that were there, saying, oh, he won this many different Masters, and kind of joking back and forth, to these incredibly tense moments. I mean, even you saw there, the South African president didn't want to watch those videos. He seemed to be turning away from them. So a lot of tension in that room as this has started to unfold. And I do just want to give a little bit of context here around what these meetings are generally like. This is not supposed to be the whole meeting playing out in front of the press. Generally what happens is the press comes in at the top, they do a little wave, maybe take a few questions about relations between the two countries, and then the press leaves and the real meeting begins. We have seen them now hash out this issue that Donald Trump said was going to come out in front of all of these cameras for roughly an hour now, as they've gone back and forth. The South Africans defending themselves, saying that what you see in the video is not what you're saying it is. Donald Trump really tripling down on his ideas and this notion of white genocide, which is, again, has been unsubstantiated.
Kristen Holmes, live at the White House. Thank you so much. Let's go back to Larry Madowo, who's been watching alongside us as this meeting has unfolded. Larry, at the root of this argument from the White House is this expropriation law in South Africa that allows the government to essentially take land and repurpose it or redistribute it. The president was suggesting that the government is doing that unfairly. The president of South Africa essentially said that no land has yet been taken, that this is a new law that was installed in January. Can you walk us through that and just fact check the claims from the White House?
Sure, Boris. The land expropriation without compensation bill that President Ramaphosa signed into law in January says that unused farmland can be seized by the government if it is deemed to be just, equitable, and in the public interest. And so far, no land has actually been expropriated. And that's a point President Ramaphosa tried to make, but President Trump did not believe. This was a good day for white nationalists in South Africa. This was a good day for AfriForum. This is the White African Lobby Group that's considered a white nationalist group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, because these were their talking points that President Trump has repeatedly said from the platform of the Oval Office. So they've gotten the best possible validation they could have imagined, because the South African government, President Ramaphosa, has been trying to say this again and again and again over the past few months, and is not being understood by the White House. I think President Ramaphosa used to be the chief negotiator for Nelson Mandela, and he told me last week, I learned at the feet of Nelson Mandela. If we have an issue, we'll talk about it. And he brought his most diplomatic self. He was not ready for the multimedia ambush that he received there because of this one misunderstanding of this land expropriation without compensation law. And I think the videos kind of helped sidetrack that, because the videos showed Julius Malema, the far-left opposition leader, talking about kill the Boer, kill the farmer. Now, this is a historical anti-apartheid song that many black South Africans grew up singing, and they saw it as not a literal call to kill the farmers, but as a song against white supremacy. You also saw former President Jacob Zuma make some statements in that video. And finally, this video of supposedly 1,000 farmers who had been killed after their land has been seized. President Trump explicitly told Ramaphosa, you're taking their land, and many of them are getting executed. And President Ramaphosa said, we're not doing that. But he was not believing it, and he believes that we in the media are not reporting it. After 15 years reporting in South Africa, I found now evidence, we've looked at it. Again, South Africa does not release crime statistics by race, but they do release the number of farm martyrs, and we looked into it from April to December 2024. There were 36 farm martyrs, only 7 of them were farmers. So the other 29 were likely other black or colored workers in those farms, but none of that gets understood in this kind of heat of the moment where President Ramaphosa sits uncomfortably trying to correct an impression which he was hoping to avoid, and discuss this away from the cameras. 1 hour in, they're still at it, Boris.
There, Larry, has been debate over that song, that anti-apartheid chant, right? And for people who don't have a historical context, it does potentially appear more literal. Talk to us about the debate that has happened inside of South Africa with the recognition of how it appears to people when they hear those words.
It is an inflammatory song, without a doubt. And many in South Africa, even black South Africans, don't think it should be sung in a post-apartheid world, 30 years plus after apartheid. But there are many who grew up under those years of white minority rule who understands the historical context of this song, Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer, that Julius Malema has made popular again. It sort of fell into disuse. It's not been that commonly sung after the end of apartheid in 1994, but it's brought it back again to reanimate the issue of the majority of land in South Africa still being owned by white farmers. Now, to be clear, most land in South Africa is actually state-owned, so it's not owned by white or black people. But out of that farmland, a majority of it is owned by the white population, and the black population own only a tiny percentage of it. So that's why this song brings that issue to the fore again. And to be clear, the economic freedom fighters that Julius Malema leads wants that land be expropriated without compensation. They would want this law to go much further than it does. They think it does not go far enough. That's what they want. They did get some support in the last election, but not enough to form government. And President Ramaphosa's ANC government decidedly chose not to go into a coalition government with them. Instead, they went into a coalition government with the Democratic Alliance, which has been traditionally seen as a white majority party. The man in the White House, Johnston, who is the agriculture minister, is the leader of the DEA party, and I think that's the point that Ramaphosa tried to make there. I have all these successful white people with me. They would not be here if there was a white genocide in our country.
Yeah, as he pointed to his agriculture minister, yes, 80% of the 63 million people in South Africa are black South Africans. 72% of that land that can be privately owned 72% of the land held by white South Africans, only 4% held by black South Africans. Just important context to note in this very nuanced discussion. Larry Madowo, thank you so much for all of that information. We really appreciate it.